Alright, Chapter 5, Organizational Patterns. Learning each chapter. This chapter pupils learn with a recognized definition, recognized classification, recognized order or sequence, recognized cause and effect, comparison, contrast, listing, enumeration, recognize mixed patterns, recognize other patterns of organization. Alright, most college students take courses with several different disciplines each semester. They may study psychology, anatomy, physiology, mathematics, English composition, all in the one semester. During one day, they may read a poem, solve a math problem, study earlier development in psychology. What few students realize is that biologists and psychologists, for example, think about the approach in the same manner in a similar way, but carefully define terms, examine cause, effects, study similarities and differences, different sequences of events, classify information, solve problems, enumerate characteristics. They may study different subject matter, they use a different language, but their approach to their studies are basically the same. Researchers, textile authority, or professor, professional writers use the standard approach to organizational patterns to express their ideas. In academic writing, commonly use the organizational patterns to include the definition, classification, order, sequence, cause and effect, comparison, contrast, listing, and enumeration. Other important parts, including statement with the clarification, summary with the generalization, example. In addition, each of these partners can work alone or with the other patterns. The patterns you can work with for you in several ways. Patterns help anticipate what the author saw of the development and the focus of your reading. Patterns help you remember, recall what you read. Patterns are useful in your own writing to help organize and express your idea with a coherent, comprehensive form. The following section describes each pattern listed with the preceding page. In subsequent chapters, you will see what the patterns used in specifically academic disciplines. 5.1. Definition. Recognizing definition. Each academic discipline has its own specialized vocabulary. One of the primary purposes of the introductory textbooks introduce the students into the new language. Consequently, definitions commonly use the pattern throughout the most introduction level of text. Suppose you were asked to define the word comedian for someone unfamiliar with the term. First, you would probably say that a comedian is a person who entertains. Then you might distinguish comedian from the other type of entertainer, saying that the comedian is an entertainer who tells jokes, makes others laugh. Finally, you might mention, by the way, for example, the name of several well-known comedians who have appeared on television. Although you have presented informally with your definition, would have followed the standard classic pattern. First part of your definition tells general classic group of the terms belong to entertainers. Second part tells you the distinction of the term, other terms of the same class or category. Third part includes further explanation, characteristics, examples, and application. So how does the term rap defined in the following paragraph? Note how the term general class is presented with the first sentence. The remainder of the paragraph presents the distinguished characteristics, sometimes rare to the typographical aids such as italics, boldface, or color to emphasize the term being defined. Example, one of the most interesting musical library developments in 1980 was the emergence of the rap, form of popular music which was recited with driving rhythmical beat, and it differs from the mainstream popular music several ways. Most important literary terms, rap lyrics are spoken rather than sung, and since the rap is form of the popular poetry as well as popular music, and most rap songs, the leader or MC tells the recite usually at the top of the speed, long rhythmic force-stressed lines that end in rhymes. That's Kennedy X.J. Giola, Diana, Literature, Introduction, Fiction, Poetry, Drama, written 11th edition, New York, Pearson, Longman, 2010, page 762. Alright, you can visualize different patterns as follows. Term, general group, distinguishing features, and then rap, popular music would be rap is the term, central group is popular music, distinguishing feature, recited beat, lyrics spoken not sung, is a form of popular poetry, lines usually end in time, rhymes. Written off, writers often provide with clues called transition signal for the organizational pattern. Begin with a U, the signal may occur with a signal sentence or connections between sentences with the transitional words that occur with the phrases are italicized in the box below to help you spot them. Transition for definition pattern. Genetics is bureau means patron refers to. Aggression can be found defined as deficit, another term that imbalanced powers also mean. Those are transition for a definition pattern. They are once again is means refers to, can be defined as another term, and also means. Alright, definition. Read the following groups and answer the questions. For the text of the purpose for the textbook, we're going to continue going on. Classification. Recognized by classification. If you were asked to describe the type of the computers may you mention for the desktop, laptop, tablets, provide with a broad topic with the major categories, either the classification pattern, patterns blindly, either the many of the academic subjects. For example, the psychology text might explain human needs by classifying them into two categories, primary and secondary. In the class chemistry textbook, various compounds may be grouped and discussed according to the common characteristics such as presence of the hydrogen and oxygen. Classification pattern provides topic patterns and basic commons as shared characteristics. Here are a few examples of the topic classification categories into which they might be divided. Movies, comedy, horror, mystery, drama. Movies, motives, achieve, power, affiliation, money, plants, leaves, stem, roots, flower. Note: the following paragraph classifies various types of cloud. The 1803 with the Luke Howard with the English Pen Naturalist published a cloud classification served as the basis for the our present-day system. According to Howard Stimmer, the three basic cloud forms and shape that recognizes Cicerus. Clouds high, white, and thin, then form delicate, very-like patches, whips-like strands other than feathery appearance. Cumulus clouds, considered globular cloud mass, they're often described with a cotton-like in appearance. Normally, a cumulus cloud exhibit the flat base with appearing with rising domes. For the tower stratus clouds, are best described as chief layers that cover the much of all of the sky. Although there may be minor breaks, there are no distinction in individual cloud units. All clouds have at least one of the three basic forms. Some have a combination of the two, such as circumcumulus clouds. And that was Ludigan's Frederick K. Turbuck, Edward J. Tuis, Dennis J. Atmosphere Introduction, Meteorology, 12th edition. You can visualize classification patterns of following topic, part 1 or 2, part 1, part or type 1, part or type 2, part or type 3, and there would be clouds, citrus, cumulus, and stratus. Alright, transition for classification patterns. There are several kinds of the chemical binding with several kinds for classification of chemical binding. Numerous types of reproduction can be classified as. Human selection is composed of compromises, muscles compromise, one type of communication, another type of communication. Finally, there is classification, several kinds, number of types classified, composed of compromise, one type, another type. Finally, are classification patterns. We're going to skip the exercise 5.2. Order and sequence. Recognize order and sequence. If you were asked to summarize what you did today, you probably would mention the key events in the order where they occur, with describing how to write with a particular computer program. You would detail process step by step in each case, with presenting information in particular sequence or order. Each example then illustrates a form of the organizational pattern known as the order or sequence. Let's look at several types of orders. Chronological order refers to the sequence of the events that occur at the time of the patterns, essential for the academic discipline, for the concern for the interpretation of the events in the past, history, government, anthropology. Of the prime example of the various forms of literature, chronological order is evident in the narrative form of the youth novel, short story of the narrative essays relies on chronological order. The following paragraph of the use of the chronological order to describe sinking of the Lusitania. In 12:30 afternoon, May 1st, 1915, the British steamship Louisiana set sail for New York from Liverpool. Passengers listed of 1,257, the largest since the outbreak of the War of Europe in 1914. 6 days later, the Louisiana reached the coast of the island. The passengers lounged on the deck as if it was peacetime. Ship sailed straight ahead and no zigzag maneuvers to throw off the pursuit. But the submarine of a U-20 was there, and Commander seeing a large ship fired a single torpedo a second after the hit a boiler, exploded a blue hole in the Louisiana side. Ship listed immediately hindered. Launched off lifeboats. 18 minutes into this, in 18 minutes it sank. Nearly 1,200 people died, including 128 Americans. As ship bow lifted and went under, the U-20 commander for the first time read the name Louisiana. And that is David Reinberg, as adopted of the American Past, Present, Combined, Volume 9th edition, New York, Pearson Long, 2011, page 596. Or you can visualize chronological order and pattern as follows: event, first action, second action, third action, fourth action, fifth action, sixth action. Transition chronological orders are in ancient times at the start of the battle on September 12th, the first primary spaces. Later efforts on chronological transitions are then before, during, by, time, while, after, as, after, thereafter, meanwhile, or and at the point. So your chronological transition words would be in, at, on, first, later, or then, before, during, by, time, will, afterward, after, therefore, meanwhile, at the point. And that gives 5 exercise 5.3. We're going to skip that. Alright, process. In the discipline and focus of the procedure, the steps and stages by which actions accomplish the process of the parent often employed with the subjects include mathematics, natural life science, engineering, many career fields with a process pattern similar to the chronological order and steps and stage follows each other on time. Transition words and phrases each of the process pattern are similar to those used with the chronological order. Note how the process pattern used with the paragraph explains how memory works. Memory is the process of acquiring information, storing it over time that will be available when you need it. Contemporary approach of the study of the memory employ information processing approach assume with the mind in some ways like with the computer data input process. The output later used in revised form is encoded stage. Information entered the way system will recognize it. In the storage stage, we integrate with the knowledge with what will is already memory and warehouse it until it is needed. During retrieval, we access desired information. Solomon Michael R. Consumer Behavior, 10th edition, 2011. It's a reprint in Pearson Education. You can visualize the process patterns following the process step 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's just 5.4, exercise 5.4 using process. We'll skip that. Order of importance. Almost all the fields give the study pattern, exercise ideas, order, priority, preference. Pattern ideas can be arranged in one or two ways, from the most least important from the least to the most important. Following paragraph sites are placed in order of importance based on the business service that they provide. Geographers distinguish settlements of the according with the importance provision of the business service. The top hierarchy are settlements of the known as world cities that plainly explicitly important role global business services. World cities are most closely integrated with the global economic system because of what they are in center flow of the information and capital. Before the first year of the territory of the world cities and the three often territories of the settlements according to the type of the extent of the business services, and the second territory of the common and control center, the containment of the headquarters of the main large corporation developed with the banking facilities and concentrations of their business services including insurance, accounting, advertising, law, and public relations. In the third tier, the specialized product service centers, they offer narrow and more highly specialized services. In the fourth tier, dependent centers, which provide relatively unskilled jobs. Robstein, J. M. Contemporary Human Geographic, 2nd edition, 2012, reprinted by Pearson Education, New York. Transition for order of importance is less essential than, more revealing than, or primary interest is. Other transitions show the other importance words: first, next, last, most important, primarily, and secondly, those show order and importance. The exercise 5 we'll skip. Spatial order, information organized according to physical location, position, order, and space. Exhibit the spatial order pattern. Spatial order is the academic discipline carries with physical description of the important. This includes numerous technical fields, engineering with the biological science. You can see the following description: a human eye relies on spatial relationship. Light comes on into our eyes, that transparent cornea. Light comes into our eyes through the transparent cornea that passes through the own opening known as the pupil. Surrounding the pupil is the iris, in which is composed of the partially of the smooth muscle that is capable of contracting, dilating, meaning it can be let less light in bright environment, more light in the darkened one. Incoming light is bound for layers of cell back of the eye called the retina. written on the inner layer of the tissue and the eye contains cells of the transform light and nervous system signals. That's Krog David Biology, a Guided Natural World, 5th edition, San Francisco, Pearson, Benjamin, Humans, 2011, page 526. Diagramming of the utmost importance work with a pattern. Often the diagram accompanies the text material used with the spatial order. For example, the diagram makes the functions of various parts of the human brain easier to understand, and structures often referred to as visual aids drawing with a provided spatial descriptions. Transition for spatial order. The left side of the brain. The lower portion. The outer. Beneath the surface, the other spatial transition would be next side above to the left, to the right, in the center, and internally, externally. Once again, these transitional spatial order show the left hand, lower, outer, beneath, next to, beside, above, left, right, in center, internally, and externally. Alright, skipping exercise 5.3, cause and effect, recognize and cause and effect, recognize cause and effect patterns express the relation between two or more action events with occurrence that are connected in time. The relationship of the difference, relation differs, however, the chronological order and cause and effect pattern, and one event leads to another. The causing and information organized with the cause and effect pattern may do the following. Explain causes, source, reasons, motives, and actions. Explain the effect, result of the consequence of particular action. Explain both cause and effect. Explain both cause and effects. The visualize of the cause and effect patterns is known as cause, and then the effects goes to the cause and effect. Cause and effect is clearly illustrated by the paragraph of the following page, which is explained with the phenomenon known as a mirage. You've undoubtedly seen with a mirage when traveling about a highway, you have undoubtedly seen a mirage while traveling on the highway hot summer afternoon. The most common highway mirages are the form of wet area that appear over the pavement ahead, only to disappear as approach. Because of the wet areas allow the disappearance of the person to get closer, more people to leave with the optical illusion. That's not the case with the highway mirages as well, but the other type of the mirages are real, as the images observed in the mirror. What caused the wet areas are the appearance of the dry pavement on a hot summer day. The layer of the air near the Earth's surface is much more warmer than the air aloft. Sunlight traveling to the region of the colder, more dense air into the warmer, less dense air, and the nearest surface blends in the direction opposite of the Earth's curvature. If the consequent light rays have been traveling downward from the sky refracted upward, appear with the observer to be originated on the pavement. What appears in the traveler as water is really just an inverted image of the sky. That's Luton's Frederick, T.K. Carbuck, Edward J. Towson, Dennis J. Atmosphere Introduction to Meteorology, 12th edition, 2013. Or the cause and effect pattern is used extensively within many of the academic fields. All disciplines ask the question why employ cause and effect for the pattern throughout pattern. It is widely used by the carriers of science, technology, and other social sciences. Many statements expressing cause and effect relation appear in the direct order, which the cause is hit first and effect is stated second. When demand of the product increases, if the price rises, however, the reverse order is used in the following statement. Price rises when product demands increase. Cause and effect pattern is not limited to an expression simple one cause, one effect relationship. There may be multiple causes, multiple effects, both multiple cases, both multiple effects. For example, the both slippery road conditions and your failure to buy snow tires causes may contribute to your car sliding in the ditch into another car effect. In other instances, chain of cause or effects may occur. For instance, falling into set of the alarm clock may force you to miss an 8 a.m. class, which turning in a term may cause you not to submit your term paper on time, which result in the penalty grade. Transition cause and effect pattern. Stress cause, transitions for cause and effect pattern. Stress causes aggression, creates depression, leads to forethought yields. Mental retardation stems from good hygiene, helps to life changes, produces hostility, produces avoidance, results in other cause effect transition, therefore consequently hence thus for this for the reason and since. Those transition cause and effect words were cause created leads to yields, stems helps to produce, breeds, results, and are therefore consequently hence thus for this reason since. 5.7, using cause and effects. We're going to skip the exercise. Alright, comparison and contrast. 5.5, recognize the comparison and contrast. The comparison of organizational pattern emphasizes with the discuss similarities between or among ideas, theories, concepts, or events. Contrast patterns emphasize with the difference within the speaker of the writers concerned with both similar and differences. A combination pattern called comparison contrast is used. You can visualize these three variation patterns as follows. The comparison item A and item B, similarity 1, 2, and 3. Contrast with differences is item A and B, item difference 1, 2, and 3. Both similarities and differences, item A and item B, similarities and differences. For the comparison with the contrast is widely used in the social sciences, which study with a different group society can try. Culturals and behavioral literatures courses may require comparisons among poets, among several literature works, among the stylistic features of business course may example the various management styles, compare organizational structures, contrast retailing plans. The contrast shown with the following paragraphs which describe the difference in parenting according to social class. Or working class, middle class parents have a different idea of how the children develop, the idea of the fascinating consequence of the children play. Working class parents' children are like wildflowers. They develop naturally. Since children develop will take care of itself. The good parenting primarily means to provide food, shelter, and comfort. The parents set limits of the child's play. Do not get near to the railroad tracks and let them play as they wish. To the middle class parents, in contrast, with children are tender house plants. They need a lot of guidance to develop correctly. These parents want their children play to accomplish something. They want them to play baseball, for example, the mountain. They enjoy the support, but help them learn how to play in the team members. Alright, depending on what the speaker of the writer is concerned, similar and differences, both similar and difference of the pattern might be organized different ways. Suppose that the professor of American literature asks you to compare the work of the two American poems of Walt Whitman and Robert Frost. Each of the following assignments possible. Compare the contrast to the first, discover the Frost poetry, and then Whitman poetry is similar, then discuss how they are different. Discuss by author. Discuss the characters Whitman poetry, then discover the characters Frost poetry, then summarize with the similarity with the difference. Discuss by characteristics, finally discover the two poets' metaphor, next discover the use of the rhyme, and then discover the common themes. Transition show with the contrast, unlike Whitman Frost, less wordy than, contrasted with Whitman Frost. Frost differs from other transition of the contrast. In contrast, however, on the other hand, and opposed to, whereas. The transition word for show contrast would be unlike, less than, contrasted with, differs from, in contrast, however, on the other hand, opposed to, whereas. Alright, transition show comparison. Similarities between Frostman and Whitman. Frost is as powerful as, like at Frostman both Frostman and Whitman. Frost resembles Whitman in the fact that other transitions of comparison are like, manner, similar to, likewise, corresponding in the same way. We'll skip exercise 5.8. And then moving on to 5.6, listing and enumeration. Recognize listing and enumeration. Someone asked to evaluate the films you saw. You may discover the characteristics, plot with the technical events. The detail of the film could be arranged in any order. Each cell provides information about the film, but they need not to discover the particular order. This arrangement is known as a listing or enumeration, giving the information on a topic by stating details one after the other, often no specific method of organizing those details. You can visualize listing and enumeration pattern as follows: topic or main idea followed by fact 1, 2, or 3. Following list advertising Objectives could have been presented in any order, all alerting the meaning of the paragraph. Advertising three primary objectives to inform, persuade with the remind, information advertising, either to provide consumers information, product, services, as well as to build awareness and initial demand of the new product. Also can also be used to explain the feature function of the product with the correct false impression. Persuasive advertising either to develop the brand preference, but is also effective with increasing the customer loyalty. Marketers often use the comparative with advertising to persuade consumers to switch brands. Remainder of advertising used as well-established brands to maintain brand awareness and remind customers to buy. Levens Michael with a meeting of the Define Explain with Applied, second edition, Upper South of the River in New Jersey, Pearson, Prentice Hall, 2012 to age 228. The pattern is widely used by the college textbooks most of the academic discipline. Evolution and form of the pattern will maybe simply list silent factors that influence light and emission. Carries a particular probe of the reason for the supporting particular social program, a description of an atom. Look for the character of the defined poverty somewhat tighter. It is used to list explain support with the profit and evidence support with the may take of the form tracks. Facts, statistics are example. For instance, of the statement, the incidence of a white-collar crime has dramatically increased over the past 10 years would be followed by facts, statistics, documents increase. Transition listing one is listing one aspect relatively, second feature relatively, also relatively. There are several characteristics of 1A, 2B, 3C. Other transition word phrases are in addition, first, second, third, and finally another. Alright, exercise 5-9, we're going to skip. Alright, mixed patterns. 5-7, recognizing mixed patterns. Organizational patterns are often combined with a description process. The writer may also give the reason which each step must be followed in the prescribed order, and instruction made to define with the concept, comparing it with something similar or familiar. Suppose a chapter in your political science textbook opening by stating the distinction between the power and power potential is an important one way to consider the balance of power. You might expect a different definition pattern where the two terms is defined, but you also might anticipate that chapter would discover the difference between the two terms. Contrast pattern with a longer reading selection more likely to combine multiple patterns. Organization. The following paragraph notices how author combines three patterns: definition, contrast, listing, and enumeration. Alright, the top paragraph, so you can have the following paragraph. Notice that the author may combine three patterns: definition, contrast, listing, and enumeration. A city central business district (CBD) grows around the city with the most accessible point, but it typically contains the dense concentration of offices and stores. CBD grows when needs of community. Examples of the contract originally, as well as the city grows in chain with the contrast master, or as the city central business district. The central business district (CBD) grows around when the city most accessible point with the typically contained with the dense concentration off the store of the central business district grows with the need of the community to expand with the contract organically as the city grows in chain with the contrast of the master planned community is residential suburban development. And then in contrast, show the definition, show that the CBD is a central business district, and then the contrast is given with the word in contrast, master plan community, residential suburban development, and master plan developments. Houses are designed to look like matched communities, but also private recreational facilities such as tennis courts, swimming pools for residents. Often the community prevents non-resident Weston is placed on the and community over that covers 10,000 acres in Florida. West and almost aspect of the community are controlled and regulated. Shrubs are planted with a shield of the real residents having look with the interstate with the road signs of uniform state. Each style is framed west and often different areas catered to different income lifestyle of the house with the Testio Point section comes from within Roman bathtubs, with an even wealthier section provides large plots of lands whose own horses. So from about right after the second definition of communities, residential, you find your listing of the master development plan, private recreational facilities. Alright, exercise 510, organizational patterns 1. Exercise 511, organizational patterns 2, paragraph 3, 4, and 5. Alright, 5.8, other patterns of organization. Recognize the other pattern of organization. Although the pattern presented in the previous section of the chapter is almost common, writers did not limit themselves to these 6 patterns, especially with the academic writing. You may also find the statement, clarification, summary, generalization, example. In addition, the transition associated with the different patterns are listed in the summing it up in tables 164, 165. So just the other, recognize the pattern of organization. Although patterns presented in the previous section within this chapter are most common, writers do not limit themselves to 6 patterns, especially academic writing. You may also find statements, clarification, summary, generalization, example, and in addition with the transition associated with different patterns or summing it all up, table 164, 165. Alright, statement and clarification. Many writers make a statement in fact that they proceed to clarify the explain the statement. For instance, a writer may open the paragraph by stating the best education for you may not be the best education for someone else. The remainder of the paragraph would be discussing, clarifying the statement, explaining how the educational needs are based on individual talent, skills, and goals. Here's an example statement and clarification paragraph about sex ratios. Sex ratio in poor countries do not show consistent patterns. Some poor countries men outnumber women, but in other tropical Africa, for example, the women outnumber the men. In fact, the variation in sex ratio can be explained only by the combination of the national economic and cultural factors. In countries of North America and Europe and Japan, women may suffer many kinds of discrimination, but they are not generally indiscriminated against when it comes to access to medical care. Note of the writer within the statement about sex ratio, poor countries, then gives to clarify the fact. The other uses the transitional phase, in fact. Alright, the summary. A summary is a condensed statement that provides the key points, large idea, piece of writing. Often writers summarize which they have already said with which someone else said. Often writers summarize what they have already said or what someone else has said. For example, the psychology textbook, you will find many of the summary of the research instead of the asking of the reading of the entire research study. The textbook author will summarize the studying findings. Often the time the writer may repeat its condensing form what he or she already said in order to emphasize and clarify the main point. Frequently summarized at the end of the textbook chapter or closing paragraphs on an article essay provide with a quick review of the contents. In the following paragraph about public policy with the author over the summary method of the organization. In summary, public policy for the purpose of the goal-oriented act taken by government to deal with problems real or perceived. The horizon of society. Public policy generally does one or more of the following: reconcile conflict, claims made by scarce resources, create incentives for collective action, prohibit moral unacceptable behavior, protect the rights and activities of individual groups, and provide direct benefits to the individual. That's Volcomere, Walter E. American Government, 14th edition, 2013. None of the author summary of the public policy does the transitional phrase in summary use. Generalization example. An example is one best way of explaining something unfamiliar or unknown. The example is best for specific instances, situation, illustrate the concept, idea, with the writers make with the general statement, the generalization. They explain with a given example to make for the making meaning clear. In business magazines, for instance, you may find the following generalization employed with the theft and increasing. Section may go into the offer of the example, the specific company with which employers fair and fictitious information into the company's computer program and steal company funds. Following paragraph dream with the writer with the generalization example. The different cultures of the place with the very emphasis for the dream and the support of the different beliefs and concerning dreams. For example, many people in the United States with the dream of the right there. Example, for many of the people in the United States view the relevant fantasy with no connection every day. By contrast, so it's part contrast. People, in other words, view dreams. So we have a general listing example with a contrast in the middle of the key source of information, the spiritual world and the dreams, such, and then views influence probability of the recall in many of the modern Western states. People rarely remember And then the Puritan South American, however, typically remember the several difference every night with a series, discover the dreams family members. So we have a generalization and contrast in both that paragraph, but it was a show of example. For example, many people in the United States would view dreams irrelevant fantasy with no connection to everyday life. None of the other begins with a generalization. Different cultures play with a different emphasis on the dreams they go to. From giving an example of specific cultural treat dreams, not to use the transitional phrase. For example. Addition. Written off and introduced, making a statement then supply with additional information about the idea. And statement, for instance, of the parenting magazine may introduce the concept of the homeschooling with provide in-depth information about its benefit. The parent is often used to expand, elaborate, discuss the idea greater in detail in the following paragraph. About pathogens, writer's additional so the writer uses an additional pattern. Some pathogens, disease cause organisms involved with a multiple also give the patterns are also complete with a full portion antibiotic prescription allowed with the drug resistant pathogens to multiply. The use of antibiotics animal feed and to spray with the fruits and vegetables during the food processing increase the opportunity of resistant organisms to evolve. Furthermore, is the evidence of the disruption of the Earth's natural habitat created trigger the evolution of the nath pathogen. The transition words would be some, also, and furthermore. Note that the writer states some of the pathogens mutate naturally, then go add to the mutated result of the human activity. Note the use of the transition word also and furthermore. Exercise 512 using organizational patterns 12, page 13. Exercise 513 organizational patterns 4. Alright, summing it up, patterns and transition, definition, patterns, displaying the meaning of the word and phrase. Definition, pattern, characteristic, then transition. Summing it up, patterns and transition. Pattern, definition, explain the meaning of the word or phrase. Transition is, refers to, can be defined as, most consistent, involved as, determined as, and classified by, occurs when, or the most entails, correspond to, is literally. Classification divides the topic into parts based on shared characteristics. Explains classified compromise is composed of several variety of different state of different groups that includes one first, second, and another finally and last. Chronological order describes events, process, and procedures. The transition words will be first, second, later, before, next, as soon as, after, finally, then, meanwhile, following, last, during, in, one of the, when, and until. Process, pattern process describes order in which things are done and how things are worked. First, second, next, then, following, after, then, last, and finally. Order of importance describes either order in priority or preference. Less, more, primary, first, next, less, more important, primary, secondary. Spatial order describes physical location, positions, place, above, below, beside, next to, in front of, behind, inside, outside, opposite, within, or nearby. Cause and effect describes how one or more of causes are related to another cause, maybe because of the war, since stems from one, because of one reason leads to, cause of the creates, yields, due to, breeds, for this reason affects, consequently results in, one result is, therefore thus the result, hence procedure produces. A comparison contrast discusses similarities and or differences amongst theories, concepts of objects, and Pearson similarities, both also similar, likewise to, as well as resemble, corresponding in the same way that compare and comparison share, and differences, unlike differs from, contrast, on the other hand, instead, despite, nevertheless, however, than despite, whereas, or opposed to. Listing, organizing, listing and enumeration, organizing information, characters, features, and parts of categories. Following several examples for the followings for several, for example, for instance, one another, also to, in other words, first, second, numerals, 1, 2, 3, letters A, B, C, most important, largest, least, and finally, statement clarification indicate with the information explained with the idea and concept will follow, and in fact, other words clearly evident and obviously. Summary indicate with a condensed review of the idea place of the writing is filed. is to follow summary, conclusion, and brief, the summary of the sum of the short of the whole. Generalization example provides example of the clarity of the broad general statement. For example, the instance of that is to illustrate thus. Addition, indicate with additional information will follow transition words, furthermore, additional, also besides, further, and additional, more again. Alright, summary of learning objectives, recognize definition, what is definition parent, definition parent, keyword, phrase, concept, define, and explain. Recognize classification, what is a classification parent? A classification parent is broad topic divided into major categories. We recognize order and sequence, what is a pattern, order and sequence. Several organization patterns view the makeup of the order sequence. Chronological order refers to the sequence in which events occur in time. Process, focus for the procedure, steps, and stages, what actions accomplished in order to importance, detail of the best in order with the most important, least most important, spatial order, organizes information based on physical location, position, order, and space. 5.4 Recognizing cause and effects. What is cause and effect pattern? Cause and effect pattern expresses the relationship between two or more action events occurrence for that are connected in time. One event leads to another, causing it, and there may be multiple causes and effects. 5.5 Recognizing comparison, contrast, comparison pattern emphasizes the similarities among ideas of their theories. Concept of events for the contrast pattern emphasizes the difference. Both patterns can be used together, create with the comparison effect. Comparison, creating a contrast pattern. 5.6 Recognizing a listing and enumeration. What is the listing and enumeration? Listing and enumeration pattern gives a non-topic statement with details one after the other in no particular order. 5.7 Recognizing mixed patterns. What are mixed patterns? Organizational patterns are often combined in paragraphs, essays, or longer readings. They are longer. The reading selection, the more likely combines multiple patterns of organization. Recognize recognizing other patterns of organization. What are other patterns of organization? Organizational patterns are often combined in paragraphs, essays, or longer reading. Longer reading selection more likely to combine with multiple patterns. In a statement, clarification pattern, the writer makes a statement of the fact, but then clarifies, explains. The statement is shown with a condensed statement, then provides the key points of a large idea of piecing the writer in a generalization example. For the writer makes general statement, then explains them by the way of the example. Additional pattern, the writer introduces an idea and then supplies additional information about it. Chapter 6 Reading and Thinking Visually.